Greetings, brothers and sisters. So I got an epic roast of Chelsea Handler coming on. She gave this monologue where she blames everything wrong in the world on men, and she sucks as a comedian. So I can't wait to get to that. But first, humans are making it hard to listen for aliens. Increasing demands for mobile services and wireless internet have crowded the radio spectrum, creating interference that can skew data and add noise to scientific results. How many aliens have you heard, right? Now, I believe in aliens, but this is just stupid, right? Like they're saying all these new cell phones are getting in the way of scientists' ability to hear aliens communicate, and they haven't heard any aliens communicate, right? Like it's saying all the trick-or-treaters are interfering with Linus's ability to see the great pumpkin, right? Like he hasn't seen it yet because, there's too many trick-or-treaters out there. Not that it's imaginary or they don't have the ability to hear aliens because they don't want you to hear them, right? Like everyone's got to give up their cell phones because it's interfering with our ability to hear the aliens communicate. And then there's this corroborated sources back bombshell testimony on Trump. And so I said this yesterday and the day before. This is hearsay. New insights emerge about Trump's attempt to join the Capitol riot. And so they don't have anybody corroborating the bombshell testimony. Because Cassidy Hutchinson's bombshell testimony was that Trump tried to grab the steering wheel and overpower two Secret Service agents, and he grabbed a clavicle or a couple of clavicles. He's a clavicle grabber, right? And so that was the bombshell testimony. The rest of the things she said weren't really that big a deal. The story that everybody was talking about was Trump was, trying to overpower Secret Service and got physical with them. The problem was that she heard it secondhand from a guy who wasn't in the car, so it was really third hand. And so without somebody in the Secret Service collaborating or some videotape, then there's nothing here. And so that's a very misleading headline because this big story, they're not corroborating. And they're admitting it needs corroboration because it's just gossip, right? It's just hearsay, which I, covered extensively. It's not news. Like you can't call this news, but they are calling it news. So then Donald J. Trump, he's on that whatever truth thing that nobody has access to except for right-wing people, said, this is his own, this is some other platform other than Twitter. Social climber Hutchinson lied about my attack on our great Secret Service, lied about her handwriting, her writing the White House note, lied about my throwing food at a wall in the Oval Office, lied about my waiting to be surrounded by people with guns, wanting to be surrounded by people with guns during my Go Peaceful and Patriotically speech. How crazy is that? Question mark. Yet no guns were found in the Capitol. These lies, amongst others, were made under oath. What is the Justice Department going to do about this? Do we have two-tiered system of justice? So again, he really didn't even need to write this, but you can see where, because he's been deplatformed, he doesn't really have the ability to defend himself. One of my viewers, who is a right-wing Trump supporter, sent this to me, right? And so it's, people who are into Trump or, whatever, truthers will seek out this platform. But now Trump has been, basically silenced, right? And, that's why they deplatform people. Okay, so let's get to one Chelsea J. Handler here.
I have thoroughly enjoyed my time guest hosting, but just like women's rights, all good things must come to an end.
That's not a joke, right? Like that's just bitter and angry, which basically sums up Chelsea Handler's comic appeal.
And if nothing else, at least I got one viewer to change his stance on abortion after watching my monologues all week. This is from Kenneth. Knowing that she isn't raising kids is almost justification for abortion.
She's laughing while she reads this, right? Because that's a funny joke. And so the first line is a funny joke. She's doing what I do here, right? She's taking somebody's hostile comment and she's going to try to roast them. And this is when I knew this was going to be an epic takedown of her because she sucks at it.
She is probably one of the worst, most horrible people on earth, a close third after Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert.
Okay, so there's not, that sucks. That's a stupid line, right? But that's, that's some kind of Twitter line. But the first one's a legitimate joke. Like a right-wing person saying that knowing that she isn't raising kids is almost justification for abortion. So this is somebody who is against abortion but would consider it because it keeps Chelsea Handler away from raising kids. That's a funny, that would be a joke you might hear at a celebrity roast or something. Like it's, that level quality joke.
I thought comedians were supposed to be funny.
Now that isn't some great, that's not some great line, but it's true. She's not funny. So this is her response.
I am funny.
Her response to the person saying, you're not funny, is to say, I am funny, and call him an a-hole. Woo! She got him! Woo! She's a great comedian.
That's why.
See, your being funny is in question here. So if a person says you're not smart, and you say, I am too smart, right? I am smart. I am too smart, right? Don't tell me I'm not a smart. I am a smart. Right? Like it's somebody saying, you're not nice. Oh, I am not. I am nice, a-hole, right? That's not a comic response. Your being funny is in question here. The guy said, you're not funny.
I thought comedians were supposed to be funny. I am funny.
That's not being a comedian. You would have to go into his content, his comment here, and you could, there's things that you could say about it. The middle line, like she isn't the third worst person in the world after Colbert or Jimmy Kimmel's, right? But none of them are funny. None of them are comedians. So that's a stupid line. Like you should, say all these other people that are worse. I mean, this really isn't a good comment to pick apart because, it's not that far off base. It's not that crazy, It's not that emotional. And the first line is funny. And so she needs to come up with something that's funny based on what the person says. And she can't do that. She's got a team of writers because she's not funny, right? Stephen Colbert isn't funny. Jimmy Kimmel isn't funny. And so her response is to, if somebody's roasting you and says, you're not this, and you say, I am this, that's not funny and it's not smart and it's not, you can't just disagree with them. That's not like comedy, right?
That's why I'm here telling jokes about one of the darkest days in human history while you're masturbating into your pillow.
So that's like one of those jokes. So, get out of your mom's basement. It's just some boilerplate. It's just some boilerplate joke, right? It's very standard. There's nothing great there. Like there's nothing funny there. Anybody can tell a joke. Anybody can say the words, right? Anybody can, remember a joke and tell the joke. There's knock-knock jokes, there's levels of jokes. And there might be a funny joke that you can repeat, right? There are jokes that anybody can repeat. And the joke itself might be funny, but you're probably not, right? Like some people are funny and some people aren't. And a comedian has to be more than a joke teller. They have to radiate some sort of humor, right? Something light in them, something about their spiritual condition, something about who they are as a person. And Chelsea Handler isn't funny. Like she has nothing, she doesn't have like a funny bone in her body, right? I mean, she probably has a lot of biatch bones. But her voice is horrible. She's got that Monica from Friends voice, a very sharp tone, very naggy, very hostile. She's like an angry woman that hates men and has made some sort of career on it, and it's not, she's not funny. And deep down, she must know she's not funny. And her face is mean. Like, she's got a mean face. Like, she's got a lot of anger and hostility. I mean, there's just, she's very unpleasant to experience as a person, right? It's the kind of person you meet somewhere and you're like, oh, I got to get away from this person. The voice, the face, all your senses, all your physical apparatus are looking at her going, my God, this is, that shrill voice. You're like it's like some sort of, what do they call it, banshee? Is that, He's like a banshee.
Men have had all kinds of weird reactions to last week's abortion ruling. Ever since the Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade, urologists have seen a spike in vasectomies. This just goes to show you that men really will do anything to avoid wearing a condom.
That's not a good joke. It's a horrible joke. And, I mean, what? Like, that's a story that you repeated. And then you make a silly joke about condoms, right? That's not a professional comedian level joke. And so she has a team full of writers, and Jimmy Kimmel, they all make these kind of jokes. It's not like that joke is so much worse than them, but somehow she's more unpleasant than even they are.
I've never personally performed a vasectomy, but I'd like to try my very first one on Samuel Alito.
Okay, so she gave this sort of like weird smile, like cherub-like smile, like innocent, evil smile to try to make that joke work. Woo! Woo! She wants to be not a Louis-o, woo! I bet she likes to do that to most men because she's just angry and hostile.
Back in 1919, after a very long fight, Congress finally passed the 19th Amendment, which gave women, like me, the right to vote. But female suffrage was...
Why'd you have to say like me? Is there some question of whether you're a woman or not? Like, why say like me? You gave all women, yeah, including you, yeah. You don't have to point yourself out, right? Like, there's just, is that narcissism or is there some doubt in case people aren't aware, like, they're not sure that you're a woman? What's happening there? Women like me
was only half the battle, which is why tonight I would like to propose a new amendment to the Constitution. It's Amendment 28, End Male Suffrage. Voting is a huge responsibility, and over the years, most men have demonstrated time and time again that they lack the judgment necessary to not that up. So let's turn things over to the ladies.
Woo! Better screw everything up. Woo! Better screw everything up. Woo! We gotta take their right of vote away. Woo!
If we endorse the 28th Amendment, maybe we can get America back to not sucking so hard. But hopefully...
So you think that America sucks so bad right now because of voting, right? Do you think that it's voting that is making America suck so bad?
We won't need to do that. Guys, if you don't want us going after your rights, then you better get up off your hairy asses and join the fight to defend ours.
Woo! She's so talented. Woo! What's the voice here?
But hopefully, we won't need to do that. Guys, if you don't want us going after your rights...
Guys, if you don't want us going after your rights...
then you better get up off your hairy asses and join the fight to defend ours.
Get off your hairy asses and defend ours. Like, it's this horrible tone. It's like this banshee-like tone. Woo! Woo! I mean, come on. That's...
Now, I hesitate to ask men for help because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get mansplained about how to win back my rights. Well, if I were a woman, the first thing I'd do is shut up, okay?
Shut up, okay? I think that's a horrible tone, right?
You do the work for a change, and don't open your mouth unless you're chanting her body, her choice.
Woo! Woo! Her about your choice. So here's the thing. None of these things are revolutionary. None of these things are, I mean, this is double-digit IQ level jokes, right? For someone who doesn't have the ability for abstract thought. And what she just said, that her body, her choice, is the pro-choice talking points, right? The pro-choice talking point is this, that a baby is being nurtured and is feeding off the woman's body, growing inside the woman's body, right? And the woman has to nurture the baby, give it nutrition through her blood, through her, life's energies. The baby is, sucking off of the mother energetically, in some parasitic type of a way. And after the baby's born, the mother's going to have to be responsible for it financially and, in all ways for the next 18 years. And so since it's happening in her body and not the man's body, that the woman should be able to have the right to choose whether she wants to carry the baby to term and give birth, right? That's their whole point of view. That's the pro-choice point of view. Of course, there's other things like, incest and rape and things. Ectopal pregnancies, is that what it's pronounced? Where the pregnancy happens in the fallopian tube and it's doomed for both the baby and the mother, things like that, right? Some kind of health issue where something wrong with the baby, something, that might cause the mother and the baby to die while she's giving birth. So these are the, talking points. But the main one is it's happening in her body and she should decide whether she wants to be a mom or not, right? And so that is, her just repeating something we all know. Like everybody knows that. Like everyone knows what the point of view of the pro-choice people are, what their point of view is. And so the issue is about when life begins, right? I agree with some of that point of view. Some of that point and argument makes sense, right? The issue is whether it's murder or not. This is not an issue about a woman's responsibility and a woman's burden in terms of being a mom. All the things that moms have to do, all the sacrifices they have to make, all the, issues, all the energy and resources they have to put into the baby, even more so than the dad. And so all the responsibilities that they have, right? All the ways that it's going to change your life. So I appreciate all those things. I understand why, if there was an option and you didn't feel like you were up to it, you would want that option, right? I could understand that, in terms of a choice. You want a choice, just in case you're not ready for, the responsibilities of motherhood. But the issue would be whether it's murder or not, right? Like, what about the burden of your parents, say? When your parents are getting old and, I guess you can, throw them in a nursing home or something, but, it's just like anything else. You just can't kill them, right? Like it's, when does life begin? Because if it's in utero, if it's when the baby's conceived and now that's a third life, well, that's something different, right? Like then, the arguments are should you be allowed to murder your baby? Like that's the whole thing about abortion. But either way, this is a comedy show and she's just repeating the talking points, right? Of the, pro-choice people. We know what they are. And, men aren't responsible for the Supreme Court, right, deciding this thing, which is helping the Democrats. And which I said before, it's a political gain for the Democrats.
There is a lot that men can do to help women, like not creating laws that kill women. You should stop voting for people who wouldn't protect your wife, your sister, mother, aunt, or grandmother's right to choose what comes out of her Pikachu.
So again, that's not a joke, right? She used the word Pikachu for the vajayjay, right? Like in case you have an extra large Pikachu.
So, you always make fun of me for having a bigger vagina than most.
Talk to your sons. Tell them why this is so important before they get radicalized by Joe Rogan.
Again, not a joke. I mean, they put a laugh track in there and they make the audience applaud with applause signs, but none of these things are worthy of a monologue, right? And she read a comment in the beginning where someone says she's not funny, and she's yet to prove that person wrong. And she just seems angry and bitter over something that doesn't affect her because she's in California and they're aborting 5-year-olds there, right? Like California is never getting rid of abortion.
Stop interrupting us when we're talking. We're sick of it. Don't tell us to relax.
We're sick of it.
You relax, okay? Do you know what relax means? It means be quiet. And why should we be quiet? Our thoughts are usually way more interesting than anything you guys have to say.
They're way more interesting. I thought they're way more interesting than what you have to say. Nothing you have said here is interesting. It isn't, anything new. There's nothing here that we haven't heard before. And it wasn't funny or interesting in the first place, right? Whether you're a man or woman, it's just somebody saying the same thing that every pro-choice person says, and every angry woman says, right? Like every angry feminist.
And then learn a little bit about how the female body works. If we have sex with you, please make sure it's worth it. We're risking prison time here, boys.
Woo! Men aren't satisfying them. Woo! And now they have to get an abortion, go to prison. Woo! Woo! And she has this smug look like she thinks she's actually rocking it, right? I mean, these are not professional comedian level jokes. And even if they were, she wouldn't be funny. Like I said, she doesn't radiate that level of, humor. She's not somebody that projects being funny. She's just bitter and angry and shrill. Shrill isn't funny. Shrill is something that pushes people away, right? Makes people want to get away from you. It's painful. It's like an irritant, right? Something irritating you and you want to make it stop, right? When you're irritated, you want to remove the irritant or you want to get away from the irritant.
And stop calling us hysterical, okay? That's what you said when Trump won the election, that we were being hysterical. Now look where we are.
Now look where we are.
You start writing letters to your congresspeople. You're a man, so they might actually listen to you. And if you...
That's just bitter, right? Again, she's a multi-million-dollar comedian with some... I did a video of her in her house, and it had all kinds of weird stuff in it, and she's just an unpleasant person, right? But it was some, $5 million home in L.A. or $10 million. It was like some extravagant home. Like, how does she make that much money and suck so bad?
You get a woman pregnant, stop saying we're pregnant, okay? If you don't have to push a Christmas ham out of your Pikachu, you're not pregnant.
Woo, she doubled down on Pikachu, woo. Woo, like there's no laughter, and then the applause sign came up. Woo.
If you invite us over for a one-night stand and the condom breaks, you go to CVS at 2 a.m. and buy the Plan B. Why are we always buying the Plan B? You're the ones getting us pregnant. And I'm...
So your earlier point was it's our body, our choice. Or, in terms of it's a woman's body, her choice, right? Which means that the decision over the pregnancy is completely in the woman's hands, right? But they're the ones who are responsible for getting you pregnant, right?
I'm an expert on this because I am responsible for 50% of the one-night stands in this country.
Woo, I'm a Babylonian hoe, woo.
And if you don't believe me, you can refer to one of my 6 #1 New York Times best-selling books.
Woo, she's a best-selling author for some reason, woo.
You have the power to make a difference. If every man donated just $1 to Planned Parenthood after they masturbated, this organization would have enough resources to help every woman on planet Earth.
Woo! She's kind of obsessed with this, right? She doubled down on Pikachu and masturbation.
In fact, I'd like all the men in the audience to take out their wallets right now and give the woman sitting closest to them half of what's in there. If you don't have cash, that's fine. Just Venmo her half the money in your checking account. And if you don't have Venmo, we'll wait while you download it. And don't worry, if you don't remember the password for your Apple ID, she'll show you how to reset it.
Because men can't do anything on their own. Like just bitter and angry and shrill.
And guys, I know that some of your hearts are in the right place, but still, you need to do a little bit more than put an RBG sticker on your Prius, okay? I don't want to point out anyone in particular, but you, sir.
Okay, so like she's just bitter and angry, right? So I heard about this rant on men from this New York Post article, Chelsea Handler's Late Night Takeover, White Men's Opinions Are Irrelevant. And I thought that it was in this video, right? But this was actually an interview that she gave. And she said this. Let me find it. I think it's down here. There's really nobody that can experience what it's like to be a woman other than one of us. So having anyone else comment on that, white men's opinions are pretty irrelevant. She just spent her whole monologue and her whole career talking about how men are, right? But somehow she thinks she knows what it's like to be a man and understands men. But men could never understand a woman, right? And that their opinions are irrelevant. But we are supposed to listen to her opinions as she just woman-splained all the things that men are supposed to do to reestablish the ability of women to have an abortion. Overturn the overturn of Roe v. Wade, right? So she was telling us, what we should do, right? But our opinions, at least white man's opinions, are irrelevant because men don't know anything about women, but women can tell you everything that's wrong with a man. And the reason that she doesn't really think men are that great or have interesting things to say and are competent is because of the effect that she has on men, right? Because there are people you have relationships with. Maybe it's your boss or maybe it's a client or maybe it's somebody, you can't get out of the relationship. Whatever it is, right? There's some kind of dynamic where you have to suffer somebody. And, you learn to cope some way. And you can't be honest about how you feel about the person because it's some sort of, situation where it's a forced relationship. And so you have to put on a fake smile. But I know every man that has to listen to Chelsea Handler and her rants and her voice, she's just angry and bitter. And it's just a dark, negative person. And just that voice alone has to go to some sort of happy place, right? And so it's just like, yes, dear, those kind of things. She's like, well, why are you so dull? You have nothing interesting to say. Because they're not listening to you. They're not engaged in the conversation, right? Maybe some guy sleeps with you because you're famous or something, but then realizes what kind of person you are and just, they're all just checking out. But the other piece to this, and this is far beyond Chelsea Handler, because now it's made it into movies and TV shows, and there's this attitude where it's an all-out war between men and women. And women have this attitude far more than men, right? That they've been screwed over by men and the patriarchy, and that everything is about being on your team, team women, whether it's betraying your husband or your dad or your brother, whatever it is. If you have the choice between being on team women or backing your, whoever, the man in your life who's been Me Too'd, right? You always go with the woman, right? You're like, that's 100% of the time, unless you're like a Democrat and the woman's a Republican or something like that, right? But, with Chelsea Handler and these other women, if I see, like, let's say I was watching Jeopardy, which I never would, but say I was, and there was a man and a woman competing, I wouldn't root for the man just because he's a man, right? I don't know any situation where I would say, all right, I prefer to root for the man because he's a man and it's the battle of the sexes. Like I've never thought that way, and I think most men don't think that way. And they say it's because you're privileged and you have all the power, but like I don't have any power, I don't have any of those kind of things. But like, I like people for who they are, right? Like I would much rather root for somebody because of their, either their ability or the kind of person they are than because they fit into some demographic. But now you have people like Chelsea Handler, like it's just, full on men hating all the time, and they're constantly running men down and all these things. But she says she's against these men and against, nobody cares about these white men's opinion, but she's replacing Jimmy Kimmel's, and she voted for Jojo Magoo, right? I mean, it's a constant with them. And, the same thing with Sharon Stone, who said, well, we got to vote for Biden because maybe if Kamala Harris gets in there, we have some women running these things. The countries where the women are running the COVID thing, they're doing great because women are just so much better than men. Like, it's a whole, it's a sexist thing to say. And if men said those things, it's just a one-sided thing. But let's go to Chrissy Teigen here. I want to talk about Martha Mitchell in a moment here. But remember Chrissy Teigen? And she's very similar to Chelsea Handler in a different way. They both say outrageous things. And so who's the other? Kathy Griffin. And Kathy Griffin and Chelsea Handler are really shrill. But Chrissy Teigen was really stupid, and she would say outrageous things, right? Something that Martha Mitchell did, and we'll come back to that in a moment. And so Chrissy Teigen would just say things that other people wouldn't. And they were like, oh, you're so outrageous. You're so courageous. And then, of course, she got canceled. And it came out that she was an alcoholic. She started to drink at 10 o'clock in the morning. She was drinking before she had a miscarriage that she talked about how painful that was, right? But she wasn't outrageous. She wasn't courageous. She was just drunk, right? She would get drunk, start drinking in the morning, and then she'd go on social media, and people would say, oh, how crazy you are. Well, it's just like talking to a drunk, stupid person in a bar, and they say crazy, outrageous things, because their brain isn't working because they're drunk, right? And, this is similar to Chelsea Handler and Martha Mitchell, right? So I saw this documentary podcast called Slow Burn that went deep into the whole Watergate thing. And it was pretty interesting. And it wasn't a truther thing, it wasn't at all a truther thing. But it was pretty, it was entertaining. My wife and I watched this about a year and a half ago. And so one of these movie channels, Showtime or whatever, got Sean Penn to play John Mitchell and got Julia Roberts to play Martha Mitchell. And taking some of the information from that, like that documentary or whatever you want to call it, podcast, and then expanding it, using some creative license, they made an 8-part TV show called Gaslit. And it seemed like they were saying that the Nixon White House was gaslighting, particularly Martha Mitchell, but all these other people. But they started the show off showing these guys to be bungling idiots, like the way that Chelsea Handler was talking about men. Nixon was up 19 points, which is true, and they decided to do a break-in the Watergate building, and they bungled it so bad, and they all looked like idiots, throughout the TV show all week, right? Like the wife of John Dean, who I didn't even think was famous, his girlfriend first, and then she became his wife. Like, she is the one that gets him to stand up, and she's the brains of the operation, and Martha Mitchell's the only one telling the truth. They make Martha Mitchell look pretty bad, though, right? And spoiler alert for all this stuff, but at the end of the show, they're at her funeral, and there's a sign that said she was right. And her daughter is, starting to question her dad, even though, she looked like she was the crazy one, the identified patient. But she was a horrible wife and really a horrible human being because they're making her sound prophetic. The only reason she knew anything was she was married to the Secretary of State, and she was so histrionic and loved to be, the attention, and she was drunk all the time. And she would go out like she was gossiping with her friends and name dropping because she, liked to be the center of attention and hold court. But she was doing it on national TV, and her, all of the things that she did led to her husband being disgraced and imprisoned. The guy couldn't control her, and, he did some sleazy stuff, and they were all sleazy. But they made her look like the hero, and she was maybe the worst character. because of this, loudmouth. I mean, she was like a feminist, man-hating type of, woman who they're celebrating. And, she was, I mean, in a smorgasbord of unlikable characters. I mean, the thing went dark fast. It started off funny, but it got kind of dark near the end. And it was just like, I mean, there's nothing redeeming about any of it, right? And, they do these things where, I mean, Watergate wasn't that bad. It's just that they got caught and the cover-up was bad. But, these kind of things go on all the time, right? I mean, Jojo Magoo and Barack Obama droned children. They literally bombed innocent children and, I mean, for nothing, like no political or military gain. I mean, that's just one example. They destroyed Libya. I mean, these scandals and the horrific, decisions made by leaders. And like Watergate was like a bungled break-in that was unnecessary. And, it's one of the biggest scandals in American politics, American political history. But if the real scandals came out, people would lose faith in the government altogether, which is a bigger point here. But this feminist look that, they keep on putting this out there that men can't do anything right, but also the men are gaslighting them and are manipulating them and treating them like they're crazy. Like, which is it? Are men stupid or are they evil? Like, like it can't be both, right? They can't be these masterminds who are controlling the world and keeping women down and then be bumbling idiots at the same time. And you see this with Chelsea Handler. You see it with, Chrissy Teigen, all these women who, they just go out and they blurt out stuff and, women start gravitating to them for some reason, but it's just like ridiculous. Their points don't, I mean, they contradict themselves and they don't hold themselves accountable, because drunk people don't, right? Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paramano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.